you?
I'm great. How are you?
All right.
Good.
Yeah. All right.
I just finished reading your first book, Salad Days. I literally just finished it about 2 hours ago, uh,
All right.
and I loved. I'm really looking forward to reading the second book, Heady Days. And one of the things that I thought was really cool as I'm reading the book is I literally just finished interviewing Nina Antonia a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. How is
Yeah.
she?
She was great. We talked about the new the re-release of her Johnny Thunders biography, and I'm going to be posting that next couple of weeks. But as I'm reading the book, I'm like, holy shit! I've talked to that lady. I feel like like one
Yeah.
one degree of separation from Wayne Hussey. So I thought that was very very cool.
Yeah. 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 Well, her daughter is Severina.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She certainly seems to have a certain muse, a certain type when she writes writes her books. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she always did though. When I remember when I lived in Liverpool with her, I was a fresh-faced young kid, really. I mean, I was unsullied by the world, shall we say, by at that point. And Nina, I think, as I said in the book, she kind of like
Yeah.
the junkie, the thin white boys that like to sit needles in their arms.
Yeah, well, I mean, Johnny
But
Thunders and Peter Parrots
her,
certainly fit that bill.
yeah, her husband Chris was really instrumental I don't know. I guess I would call him a mentor. Sadly died earlier this year.
I've also, listened to the new live record, Live in Buenos Aires.
Oh,
Sometimes, live albums can be hit or miss, but this one was just it's glorious. It's so damn good. I love the new song Grotesque. Tell me about a little bit about that track. It's just I think it's a beautiful, beautiful song.
Well, thank you very much. Firstly, and secondly, it's not that new. It was originally recorded and released on an album in 2007, I think.
Mm,
An album called "God Is a Bullet." It was the last track on that album, and Simon, who wasn't in the band at the time, actually did the guitar solo on it. So Simon knew that one. I mean, it's a song. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, and it was my song. It's my meat is murder, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
but
I mean, it's something that I feel passionate. I'm not one of those militant vegetarians. You can eat what you want. I got no problem with it, but at the same time, it's my choice.
it's certainly a strong statement, but beyond that, it just happens to also be attached to a really
Yeah,
great song too.
yeah. I mean, the studio version was good, but the way we've been playing it live with this lineup has been great. And when I heard that version from Buenos Aires, I just thought, you know what? Why don't we just put that out? Do a video and put it out as a single, and in the absence of any new material or any new recordings, put something live out. And as you say, I think that album is actually a very very good live album. I'm not a big fan of the genre, to be honest with you, and
Yeah.
we've released a lot of live albums over the years. So,
That's why I
um,
say so many of them are hit and miss. And sometimes they sound great, sometimes they don't. But I mean, I'm listening to this one. I'm like, when I saw the mission, and this would have been 1990. You guys played on my college campus back in Milwaukee. Uh,
yeah, I remember. There's a trio overhanging the stage, wasn't there?
yeah, and a friend of mine had booked the show, and I had already graduated, but had to come back because I really want to see the show. And I just remember being just completely transfixed on how great of a live band the Mission was at the time, and then to listen to this new live album, it's like you guys haven't missed a step. It's every bit as powerful now as it had been then. Tell me about you guys as a live act. That's not entirely easy to do to still be great live after so many years of doing it. Tell me a little bit about the band now.
Well, I mean, if I knew what the secret was, then I'd bottle it and sell it, But I don't know. I mean, we enjoy it, we do enjoy the shows. I mean, I think the touring can get grueling, the traveling and the rest of it, the lifestyle. But the shows themselves, we always. I say we always, but mostly enjoy the shows. There's occasionally one that we don't, but that's normal. I think we enjoy playing together. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's the kind of music that any of us would listen to at home. But when we get together and we get in a room and we make that big noise together, we think, you know what, this is not bad at all. We're pretty good at this, lark. And I think touch wood, we've still got our health, to a degree. I mean, I can still sing. I haven't really lost much in the voice department, and we can still play. I guess the energy might be a little bit different these days. Certainly, I think the shows are more consistently good
Yeah.
now, as opposed to back then. They could be absolutely amazing or absolutely atrocious. But I think, it's just our lifestyle,
Yeah.
for instance, I don't drink on tour anymore.
Mhm.
That's I think recent. Given up drinking on tour, and I feel better for it. I like to go on stage feeling in good health, and that I can sing.
Yeah. There's a lot of your contemporaries that have lost that ability, that's for sure. But the tour that you're going on now, with the Chameleons and Theater of Hate, I mean, you to me, that's just mind-blowing. You couldn't put together a better bill if someone held a gun to your head. I mean, that just sounds like an amazing lineup to me.
Again, thank you. I'm not sure it would be my choice of a great night out, but but I think it's a good bill. I like the Chameleons and I
Yeah.
like Theatre. I like Kirk. Yeah, I think it's be good value for money, and we all come from the same era. I mean, or actually, both the Chameleons and Theatre of Hate are older than the Mission. Not as bands, they've been around longer than we have. But yeah, and I mean, it's a good bill. I think you'll get little bit of everything with that. I mean, went out and played some shows with the Cult in the UK just about a month ago. Just three shows, and that was good. I mean, the old Cult. It's a crossover. And the same could be said with the Chameleons and with Theatre of Hate. There's a little bit of a crossover with the audiences, but each band has their own audience too. So, with the Cult, there's a crossover, but the Cult are more rocky than we are.
You mentioned about how this may not be the music that you would choose to listen to on your own. One of the things that you did in the book that I thought was really really cool is every chapter came with its own playlist of songs, and your selection of each chapter was like it was just so diverse in the music that you were choosing that that every the flip of every chapter I had to read, well, who's coming up this in this chapter, because they were, I mean, a great bunch of songs.
Well, I mean, I tried to choose stuff that pertained to the book itself, but sometimes, certainly with Spotify, they didn't always have some of the songs that I was talking about. So, I had to kind of choose something else. But I just thought you're reading a book about music. I thought, well, it's a little bit indulge myself here a little bit and put, some of my favorite songs, together as a playlist. No, I just thought it was a cool idea to have a playlist that pertained to the chapter, and if you so wanted, you could have that playing in the background while you're reading.
I wind up reading a lot of autobiographies for this podcast, and some of them are really great to get through, and some of them are really not great to get to. But I found that the way that you described your career and your life, even from early on in your childhood, and then to meld that with the music that reminded you of periods within the story, I just thought it was a very unique idea, and I almost wish more people would treat their stories that way, because I think a lot of people on their own have their own soundtrack to their lives, and it was interesting to see what soundtrack you carried throughout your life. It's really
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, no, well, I'm a musician, and the reason I became a musician is because I love music. I love, I have my favorite bands when I was growing up. I wanted to be in the Beatles, and I wanted to be Mark Bolan. I wanted to be in Led Zeppelin. That's if you're writing about music, then the music is the reason I'm here. That's the bottom line.
You're in a very small club of people who who have gone through not just one successful band in your career, but really three. If you go back to Dead or Alive and the Sisters of Mercy, and then and the Mission, and it could have been four had you accepted Holly Johnson's invitation to join Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But I mean that kind of track record doesn't exist with very many people. It just doesn't happen. But it has happened to you. I mean, do you see that as being like just like just fortunate, or just at the right place at the right time in those situations?
Well, that's one and the same, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being fortunate, right place at the right time. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely definitely a case of that to a degree. I mean, I am a good musician, but there are millions of good musicians that don't have the lucky breaks that I've had, or the good fortune I've had. There's also a lot of musicians who are far more successful than me that are nowhere near as good as me. But that's the way the cookie crumbles.
That's true.
I've been very blessed, I mean, I'm 65 now, and touch wood, I've still got my health. I'm still able to make music for a living, still go out with the lads and, touring and making a big old noise and enjoying it. I think I said in the book, I think I always felt it was my destiny, if you want, to be a musician. By hook or by crook, that's what I was going to be, you know. So if I'd been in Dead or Alive and we flopped, I would have just moved on to the next band, and I mean, I got lucky, but at the same time, you have to make your own luck as well, I
Yeah.
think.
I interviewed John Robb a couple months ago. He just
Oh,
wrote
good man,
right. He a very
good man.
great guy, and he just released his book, Heart of Darkness: The History of Goth. And there's a number of reoccurring characters in the book. You're certainly one of them, but one that really sticks out, and he's a big part of your story as well, is Pete Burns. And every time I've heard stories about Pete, he just sounds like this enormously interesting, charismatic, eccentric character, and not anything to do with what he was like later in life, but that those early years of Pete Burns' existence are really fascinating. Tell me about him and about playing with Dead or Alive and those early mutations of that band.
Well, when I first moved to Liverpool, which was around Christmas 77, New Year 78, that period, I would go into Liverpool, into the city centre, and then go to the independent record store, which was called Probe, which was just round the corner from a club called Eric's, which was very instrumental in a lot of musicians' careers in the end. And Pete worked behind the counter in Probe, and he was always really quite scary and intimidating, because if you go in and ask for something and it's, what you want that shit for? It's like, and then you kind of throw the record at you. And he had complete license to do that. I mean, the owner of the shop was like that himself,
Right.
So it was like running the gauntlet. I always prayed that when I went into Probe and, for a new record, I wouldn't, it wasn't going to be Pete that served me. Well, I got to know him a little bit without really knowing him. Got to, when you pass in the street, you stop and say hello, how you doing, that kind of thing. And then he formed Nightmares and Wax. I think I saw his first ever gig actually, and he was, I mean, I think I said this in the book. The only time I've ever witnessed, an audience back off from the stage when the band come on, when Pete came. I mean, he was a very very strong personality, very he took no messing. He was a working piece of art in his own head. So he would never leave the house, with untidy hair or scruffy clothes, or he'd be immaculate. And he'd walk through the centre of Liverpool, and all these scatty lads go, look at the state of him, and he would take no shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him batter young lads, giving him lip. He'd have a real go at them. And Pete, he was a big bloke.
Yeah.
He was quite tall, but he was also quite stocky, and you wouldn't really want to mess with him physically. But he also had this really caustic wit, and he took no prisoners, and he could be very cutting. But if you were on his team, he was amazing. He was amazing to have on your side, and he was very loyal up to a point until he decided he didn't want you around anymore, and then you're ostracized. And you know, he was a huge character and with a huge voice, very, very, very talented, which is
Yeah.
I think is so often overlooked, you know, in light of his later life, which is a shame because he really was a talent.
You go from a guy like that, and then you join Sisters of Mercy with Andrew Eldritch, and I realize they're two very very different people, and going from one situation to another with volatile, strong personalities. In a way, there's some similar parallels in those two situations, but your role in both bands as a guitarist and a songwriter are both pivotal. But I mean, Andrew Eldritch is again in many ways like Pete Burns in the sense that he is a completely individualistic, controlling presence in whatever he does. As I'm reading the book about Andrew, and I've talked to other people within his orbit, for lack of a better word, it just sounds like this is a very complicated guy, and I don't know if he's misunderstood or he's understood exactly for what he is. Having worked with him early in Sisters of Mercy, what's your assessment of him? After all these years.
Well, I have no knowledge really of what he's like these days. You know, I obviously hear stories like you, like anybody else. I hear that he's still not particularly easy to work with, which is fine. You know, there are people that aren't particularly easy to work with. Um, when I was in the band with the sisters, it was when I joined the band, it was a band on the verge of splitting up already. You know, Gary Marks and Craig were both not particularly happy with Eldritch. Eldritch had already adopted this persona. I didn't really know Andrew any other way than being Andrew Eldritch, but obviously Craig and Gary Marks both knew Andrew before he became Eldritch when he was Andrew Taylor,
Yeah.
you know, and the persona kind of blossomed and took over. And so, I mean, again, I say this in the book, I think, where there would be occasional little peaks at Andrew Taylor. And my impression of him was as he is very intellectual, but he was a bit of a geeky nerd, you know. But then he adopted, the Eldritch, the name is, and the persona became I think it, kind of overtook who he was. I have no idea what he's like these days. I haven't seen him for many, many years. Um, I have to say that when I was in the Sisters, I thought we were the best band in the world. So when we were doing something that was really different at the time. You know, we were a rock band with a drum machine, and I just thought we were great, and I loved it. But it came at a price, I mean, Andrew was difficult to work with, not very personable, which is fine. You've been in bands before and since where you don't always get on. You don't have to get on. I know people in bands that really don't like each other, but the only time they see each other is when they're on stage. But that's
Right.
what they do, and for them, the end justifies the means. But for me and Craig, I think it just got to the point where, you know what, this constant battle of wits with Andrew, it's just tiring. It's just making the music as good as it was, first and last and always. It didn't really warrant all the shit that we had to go through to get to that point. And I think we just enough's enough. Let's get a band together with a bunch of mates.
You described it in
What
the book in a really interesting way. Andrew being largely absent in for a good deal of it, but at the same time having the rest of you guys are rehearsing, have a good time socially, but then he's also assuming a great deal of control, but on his own timetable. I mean, you would probably know more than me, but that just seems like a very counterproductive way of working together as a unit when the guy who is singing and doing lyrics is not there and not participating, but then all of a sudden assuming this real controlling attitude. As I'm reading it, I'm going, why did you stick around in it as long as you did? I would think that'd be an impossible way to work.
Well, it wasn't that long, really. I mean, it was. You got to understand when I joined the group, I just left Dead or Alive. I was asked to join the Sisters, and it was like, great, I'm gonna go out and talk with Dead or Alive. I think I did 6 shows in 2 years with them. With the Sisters were touring all the time, so it was like, yeah, great, I'm going to be in a guitar band. It's touring a lot, so it appealed to me. So when when I joined the band, okay, the dynamic was a bit fucked up, but I've been in bands before where, the dynamic was a little bit weird, but you just get on with it. You're young and you're adaptable, and in the overall scheme of things, it's the end result that really matters. And I joined the Sisters, and yeah, it was fractured. Relationships was fractured. It was never a case of all working together on music. I mean, basically, we would all work separately. I mean, Craig and I did a little bit together, but basically, we all put studio home and wrote our own tunes, and then Andrew would, if he felt like doing so, he would write lyrics for them, vocal melodies. But it was never a case of sitting down there with acoustic guitars and say, how about this chord, or it was never like that, the dynamic. And yeah, and I think when the Mission were the complete antithesis of that, really, of a reaction. We wanted to be in a band with people we liked, who wanted to tour. I wasn't even sure about being a singer, to be honest. I mean, it was just like, I just want to be in a band to tour. So it was like, okay, well, need a singer. I'll have a go then.
You you had a bunch of songs that you presented to Andrew as you're trying to start working on the second Sisters of Mercy album, and he rejected all of them. And smartly, wisely, you took a bunch of those songs, and they became kind of like the backbone of that first album by the Mission. And some of them that were rejected were just great songs. And I'm glad you did it because to me that was like it had to be incredibly validating for you guys as the Mission, you and Craig, to put that band together and then have it, be successful. I mean, it just had to be having gone through that situation with the sisters and then to go to this other project. I mean,
Hmm.
that had to be incredibly satisfying.
Of course. I mean, within 3 months of Craig and I leaving the Sisters, we had our new band. We had a bunch of new songs, as you mentioned. I'd written a whole bunch of I mean, 12, 13 tunes I'd written with the idea that, okay, this could be, with the second Sisters album. But Andrew wanted to go somewhere different with the second record, which is fair enough. He wanted to go to be more kind of electronic and more, I don't know, he just wanted to go somewhere different, which was, fine. It was disappointing. And in the end, it was just like, okay, I need to follow my own route here. But yeah, I mean, within 3 months, got the band together. We had a set of songs. We were out touring with the Cult.
Mhm.
And, within the space of in a year, we were one of the biggest, well, probably the biggest new band in Britain at that time.
So 1986, I'm in my 3rd year of college, and the first album by The Mission comes out, and
Hmm.
I'm working at the campus radio station, and the first song we play is Wasteland. Now, I went to a Catholic college, and so to hear it for the very first time was like a real punch in the was like a real punch in that face. That opening line, I believe in God, but God no longer believes in me. And then to read about your upbringing as a Mormon. Uh, I mean, I was as I'm reading, I keep thinking about, well, that had to be even a much more powerful statement from someone growing up in the way you did. Tell me about that line. I know it's been a favorite of people like Iggy Pop has really had showed appreciation for it, but it's an amazingly powerful statement to open up your first record.
It was accidental. I mean, what I do remember is I was in the studio and I was about to do a vocal. Can't even remember what song it was for, but the Tim, the producer Tim Palmer, was saying, just speak in the microphone. Let me, get a level, get a sound. Then it's like, so I started singing, started saying stuff, and that came out, and it was like, hang on, Tim, you ready to roll? And it was like, yeah, okay. Let me just repeat what I've just said because I want to put this on the album, and so I did, and then it was like, you know, we just ended up putting it as the first thing on the album because it wasn't any of the lyrics. It was just something that came up with there and then in the studio. It was I don't know where it came from. It was just one of those things.
Well, it's a hell of a way to start a record. That's for
Mm.
damn sure.
Yeah, yeah, it was all downhill from there.
The forward of the book, Gary Newman, writes about something that I totally agreed with, and he had mentioned that the song "Tower of Strength" off the Children album, in his opinion, was just like a perfect record. And I know you guys are friends, and I know he's only going to say nice things about you for your book, but I remember feeling the very same way when I first heard it. In fact, I think I played it like 6 times in a row because like one of those songs where I just didn't think 8 minutes was going to be long enough. I just want to keep hearing it over and over again. And the funny part about it is I remember a bunch of people saying, "Well, that just sounds like Led Zeppelin to me." And I thought, "Well, I would hope so," with John Paul Jones producing it. To me, that's like one of the great songs of the '80s. When people hear you guys play that now, is the reaction still as strong today as it had been back then? Because I mean, to me, it's
Yeah,
just a perfect record.
it's our anthem. You know, it's the thing we it's the song we normally finish our shows with the end the nights with. It's the moment of communion between us and the audience. You know, really it is it's that is the song for us really that as I say, yeah, it's the biggest moment of communion between us and the audience. I mean, it's a song I wrote for the audience, you know.
Well, and that shows up in the Live from Buenos Aires album because as you're singing it, it's like you're letting the audience carry much of the vocals, but it's like, man, that audience knows how to sing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, they did. I mean, I mean, the thing about the Buenos Aires audience is, and it's always been the way. I mean, they are fanatical, and I don't for 1 minute think it's specifically for us. I think they are fanatical
Yeah.
about the bands they love. I mean, nowhere else in the world do we go on stage and start the show with Beyond the Pale, and they sing the guitar lines. They sing the guitar lines. Nowhere else in the world does that happen. And it's an amazing feeling when you go on and then the audience are going la 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 la, and it's like fucking hell. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I mean the Tower of Strength is still a very powerful song for us.
You talked about your respect for bands like Led Zeppelin and meeting John Paul, meeting like Jimmy Page for the first time. That didn't go probably as well as you wanted to, but then to work with John Paul Jones on that record, had to be really thrilling because he did a good job on it. I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing about that album is that we were really a band at that point, and John probably as a result of all his experiences with Zeppelin. I mean, really, he banned the record label from coming down. Management state, he wouldn't play them things until he was ready to play them. And I think it became really we kind of had a siege mentality that he nurtured and encouraged during the making of that record, so that we weren't being influenced by business considerations. Of course, the managers, would come down and say this and that, but the record label were banned after the first couple of weeks, coming down. And I think we ended up making, I mean, I've said it, it's a record we wanted to make at that point in time. We were, we'd had a very successful first album, and the record label were looking to obviously go one step further with the next record. Some would argue it did. Some might argue it didn't. It doesn't really matter now. But what it did do, for me, I look back at that and I think that was our strongest time as a band. We were the closest
Hmm.
as we ever were, and we were, in a studio working with one of our musical heroes for I don't know 3 months, 4 months, however long it took. It was a while, and it was a looking back, it was a wow moment,
Yeah.
you know.
You
Yeah.
you talked a little bit in the book and I thought this was really interesting. And it was kind of like on the business end of music. There was a whole discussion about like songwriting royalties, for example, and in
Uh-huh.
in a band how how important it is to kind of have those discussions if you're going to record, how you want to divvy those up. Because it is the kind of thing that tends to destroy bands because, there's resentments and there's hostilities and, some people think they're giving away too much or, not getting enough or whatever it may be. As a guy who's been doing this for an awful long period of time, does that philosophy of royalties remain consistent with you, or does it change based upon the situation and the people that are involved?
It changed. It changes with the situation and people involved. I mean, when I was in Dead or Alive, whoever came up with the basic tunes would get the credit. Even though the band would work them and evolve them. Whoever came up with the basic chord sequence would get the credit, and Pete would get the credit for writing the lyrics and the vocal melody. Um, with the sisters, it was exactly the same. It was, whoever came up with the basic tunes would we would put, as I said before, we would demo and work on our own Porter Studio demos and then give them around. And Andrew would sometimes deign to write lyrics for them and sometimes not. And then that would they would the publisher would be split that way. With the mission, I wanted to create an atmosphere of being more of a band when we started. So what I decided to do was give everybody 20%. So basically, usually publishing is split 50-50 for the music and 50-50 for the music and the lyrics, right?
Right.
50% each. With the mission, I came up with this idea of everybody music we'd split. It would be 80%. We'd all get 20% each, regardless if we could come up with it. And now we get 20% extra for the writing the lyrics and the vocal melodies. Although I came up with 95% of the songs anyway,
Right.
the music. And but what that did do was, yes, everybody, it gave everybody a source of income that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. I mean, they still reap the benefits of that. Those splits are still there for the first three albums. Uh, yeah, for 3 or 4 albums, and what it did do was gave me the license to say, okay, this is the demo. This is how the bass line. I want the bass to be played like this. This is how it goes. I want the drums to do this, and I want the guitar to do this. This is how it goes, Simon. And it. Or I could go in with a couple of chords and say, look, I've got this idea, but I don't know what to do with it. And so that way, then we would work on it together, and then and everybody knew that was they were getting a share.
Yeah.
You know, but I think once the band started splitting up and we were still going out and playing songs and you know basically Simon was sat at home while we were on tour and we were making money for him. um Over the course of the history of the band, publishing splits have changed, and now they come back down to whoever wrote the song.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, I mean, I would imagine that, as time goes on and people, come and go within a band, it can't just stay like a static situation because
No,
I mean, you've
no.
got guys that may not have played with you for, 15, 20 years still, getting, royalties on things that they may not have really participated in. And, is that fair to the new guys or who are in the band? I mean, to me, it seems like it's a real challenge and a challengingly difficult balancing act, especially for a band that's been around for a while. How do you go about, maintaining this without, bruised egos and resentments building?
Well, I think with some, well, I mean, when obviously when Simon left, we replaced him, and but then the new guitar. I mean, when Simon left and then Craig left and we got a new band together, we still split the publishing, but the publishing was the splits were more, I think it was like 10%. There were five of us in the band, so we each got 10% for the music, and then I would get 50% for writing. Because I'd write the songs basically,
Right.
so then I would get 60% and they would get 10%. I think that was the way it went. But you know, yeah, you're right. I mean, when musicians, they did start to come and go with alarming frequency. So it's like, so I kind of didn't see the merit of, giving away, um, you know, credit where they didn't even play on a record,
Right.
for instance.
Right. So where are you at now as far as new music goes? When we started talking, you said that in in lieu of a lot of music being ready now. I mean, do you have songs that are written, or are there any plans to record a new album?
No, I'm always writing new music. I'm always making. I've got a studio here, so I am making new music and all the time. I'm actually working on I don't know what, I don't even know if it's going to be an album, but I'm working on some stuff which is more, how can I say, more ambient.
Hmm.
Um, then it's more a lot of what I listen to these days is ambient music, vocal not without vocals, but vocals that are a component part of the whole, as opposed to a vocal sitting on top of the song and being the predominant thing that you hear.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of using a voice as another instrument within the overall context of the piece of music. I don't, the pieces of music that I'm working on are like 25 minutes long, 18 minutes long. They are mainly improvised to start with, but
Hmm.
then we start building up the tracks. I don't think it's not definitely not for the mission. But it's something I'm doing at the moment that I'm interested in. I'm working on it with my wife actually. And she's doing quite a lot of the singing and the writing of words, but the writing of words are more about sound uh, rather than meaning.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been the words need to sound good in music.
Right.
They don't need to mean fuck all really, but it's nice when they do. But it's more important that they sound good to me. In terms of the mission, I'm not going to say never ever, but if we never do ever make another record, then I'll be quite happy with another Fall from Grace as being the last one.
Yeah.
I think that's a good album. But I'm just saying, never say never. I mean, as I said, when I get in a room with the boys and we have good old bash, it feels good. Making that old racket. I mean, I'm not averse to the idea, but the logistics of trying to get all that together is we all live in different parts of the world, so
Yeah.
it's
I was gonna say, being in a band while you're in Brazil and they may be somewhere, somewhere else. I
well,
mean, that can't make it things easy.
yeah. Craig lives in Maryland. Alex lives in North Carolina, the drummer, and Simon lives in Sheffield, England. So yeah, it's not we don't get together every weekend for practice. We don't put it that way.
The mission is coming to our area, Brighton Music Hall in Boston on October 11th, and the live album is just sensational. And the second part of your book came out just this summer. Wayne, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I wish you best of luck on the tour, and I can't wait to dive into the second book, Heady Days. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good read. I think it is. I think it's a little darker than the first book, although it's got a lot of comedy moments too.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Wayne, best
Yeah.
of luck. I really appreciate
All
the
right.
time today. Thank you very much.
You take care.
All
Thank
right,
you
take care.
very much.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Bye bye.